Hello, I'm Daniel Lane, and it's my pleasure to welcome former Australian Test cricket captain Steve Waugh. Steve, great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, mate.
Steve, in trying to think of how to introduce you, I thought I could have said you're a humanitarian, a philanthropist, former Australian of the Year, sporting idol in India, a living god. But hey, how do you see yourself?
Oh, mate, just the average guy who tries to do the best at what he's doing. I think my philosophy is always 100%, so whatever I do, I give it my best, and I'm happy if someone describes me as making the most of my potential.
One thing I did fail to mention is you're an author, and you're on the publicity trail at the moment, promoting your latest book, and I think it's your 12th book, The Meaning of Luck.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be at 12th, but it's actually 13th. I hopefully it won't be unlucky for me, but I did a photography book as well, so whether that counts or not. But yeah, look, I really enjoy the process of writing. It's something I never thought I'd do. If you asked my English high school teacher whether I was going to write one book, I think it would have said definitely no, because I can't remember reading any books at high school, but it's something I've really grown to enjoy and love, and I like the process of writing longhand.
Steve, your book gives tremendous insight. I mean, you spoke about that terrible day in 2006 when you were in Melbourne, and you received a phone call saying that Lynette had a bleed on her brain, and the bleed actually grew from a squash ball to the size of a grapefruit. Yeah. But what was really pretty harrowing to read was when you're on the plane and you're going through the thoughts of, and you said the demons, and one of those demons was Lynette was my childhood sweet. But how did you deal with that, and how did it change you as a husband, father?
Yeah, look, it was, looking back on it now, I was just in shock, I think, because I was actually down in Melbourne, ironically, on my last book tour, out of my comfort zone, and I was with a really good mate of mine, a young boy called Matthew Dean, who I'd met at the Starlight Foundation, and we kept in contact for that ongoing 10 years, and I still keep in contact with him every week now, and he's an amazing young kid. And I was with his family about to cut a cake just to celebrate our friendship, and I got a text message from Lynette's father, Phil, saying, Lynette's been taken to hospital, can you give me a call straight away? And he's a person that's not prone to exaggeration, so I thought this is pretty serious, so straight away I called up, and from there it escalated. Every couple of minutes the news progressively got worse and worse. I got back to the hotel in Geelong, it was about 9:30 at night, no domestic flights out of Melbourne at that time, so I'm sitting in a room getting worse and worse news and thinking, how am I going to get back there? And finally, the last call before I sort of got a cab to the airport to catch a private jet which had been organised was from Charlie Teo, the neurosurgeon, a good mate of mine. And he said, look, Steve, you've got to prepare yourself for the worst. And that was the last conversation I had with the neurosurgeon before I got on that private jet. And as you say, I was flying through the clouds on the way, landing down in Sydney. And Gav Robertson, a really good mate of mine, who I called up before I got on the plane, I just said, can you keep me in contact? Let me know what's going on. I need to know, just be 100% honest with me, tell me as it is. And as we were flying down into Sydney through the clouds, all these white clouds flying past us, it was really surreal, and I got the text message, give me a call, Gav, and I just instantly thought this is bad news. Lynette's passed away, because when I got on the plane I thought, I'm not sure whether she's going to be alive or not. So that was a scary moment, and thankfully she was still okay, and then we got to the hospital, and really the next 24 hours was a battle to save her life.
And that message, I think, which added to your fear was it came at 11:11.
Yeah, exactly right. It's funny how your mind starts playing tricks on yourself. All throughout my career, the numbers, when I saw 11 or 1111 or 111, I just considered that good luck, and I told myself that was good luck, something good's going to happen. And I don't know why or how that came about, but then all of a sudden I saw the time 11:11 when the message was left, and I thought, hang on, does this mean something bad's happened? For some reason, I talked myself into believing that it was bad news. So yeah, it just shows the state I was in. I was pretty fragile, I guess.
Well, thankfully Lynette came through. I believe that she really worked hard to regain her, to regain what she was. But a lot of people look at you and say you're an Australian sporting warrior. But what did you learn from Lynette?
Look, yeah, I may be a warrior on the field, but I think I'm pretty much like the rest of us, particularly when it comes to family, and you realise that something may be taken away that you took for granted. And all of a sudden I was facing losing a wife and having 3 children under the ages of basically 7 or 8 down to 2, and I just didn't know how I was going to cope or whether I could cope and what tomorrow was going to bring. And I think I was in shock for a little while, but all of a sudden the world was turned upside down, and cricket all of a sudden didn't matter so much, or it didn't mean anything really. It was just, how are we going to get through this situation?
And before you went into the hospital, into the ward where Lynette was, you've washed your face, got rid of the tears, and thought, I've got to be the rock. That must be very hard.
It's funny, you just kick into survival mode, because, look, finding the news and seeing her father-in-law and Gav Robertson downstairs, and then seeing Lynette's mother and her sister, it was all very emotional. I mean, everyone was on edge and didn't know what was going to happen. And so I sort of went in the bathroom, washed my face off, and thought, it was almost like going into bat for a test match. So I said, right, I've got to switch on now. I've got to be strong. Someone's got to, be the face of this and just take it on and be calm in a situation where everyone's so worried. I mean, internally I was very worried, a bit like going to bat, you're nervous. On the outside I put that exterior where I've got to get through this somehow, I've got to show good body language, I've got to be positive, and I've got to be there for Lynette. That was the number one priority. And
you've had to put that face on a few times away from cricket.
Yep.
You've detailed in the book your work with Udayan over in India. But I think it says a lot for you as a person, the reason that motivated you to get involved with Udayan, which was basically to look after the daughters of people suffering from leprosy.
Sure.
What sparked it?
Interesting, looking back, it's hard to know exactly, but I think meeting Mother Teresa must have been a catalyst. I've always wanted to meet her. I just was amazed that this person could give a whole life to the poorest of the poor without any regard to material possessions, and had the chance on a tour to go there. Robert Craddock was the guy who'd organised it, obviously a fellow journalist of yours. We went and met her briefly, but she had this amazing aura and presence about her. And I just thought, maybe in my position there's something I could do in a small way that would mirror what she has done. And the opportunity came up a year later to visit this place called Udayan, which is a rehabilitation home for children who suffer from leprosy or their parents have leprosy. I went to this place, saw how fantastic it was. But then I said, look, I want to go to where they come from to see the difference. So I went into a leper colony, which I think the locals found a bit strange. And that was a real eye-opener. And whilst I was in there, I said, well, I know you're looking after 200 boys, but why aren't there any girls? And they said, well, the boys are the breadwinners, and that's who the parents want you to take away to give a good life to. And I said, well, what happens to the young girls? And the answer really struck me that, if by the age of 7 or 8, they'd have to sell themselves on the street to make money for their family. And I just had my first daughter, Rosalie, 3 months before that. And it was a comment where I heard, and I thought, well, I can't pretend I didn't hear that. I can't walk away and do nothing about this. And that's the moment I thought, well, I've got to start raising funds for a girls' wing. And actually last week we just inaugurated a new wing for the girls, and there's 110 girls staying in there now. And so that was, it was a life-changing moment meeting Mother Teresa.
One of the interesting things I read was when you went into the leper colony, you actually wanted to go into a house to see how the people lived, and you were taken aback by the conditions. There's no running water, obviously, but bits and pieces of galvanised iron, plastic.
Yeah.
But you asked the woman, what do you look forward to? And it sounds like her response really rocked you.
Yeah, look, it was a difficult situation to walk into, because I think I described it as like, walking into hell, which it pretty much was. There was just nothing there of, the kids were lively still, but the place was sort of so sombre and depressing, and, there was a lot of people there with open festering wounds, and they just... so I went through the interpreter. I asked this lady who had, quite a few of her fingers missing and open wounds on her legs, and her eyesight was affected through leprosy. What do you look forward to in life? And the interpreter asked her the question, and there was a one-word answer. I thought, I wonder what that is. And she said, nothing. And that really got me thinking, these poor people, like, they're in the terriblest of conditions through no fault of their own, and they've got absolutely nothing to look forward to. And that really, as I say, struck a chord with me.
Well, you have helped their children, particularly their daughters, and do you see that as one of your great achievements?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I went back there last week, and I obviously play a small part in that. Reverend James Stevens is an amazing guy from England who set this up 41 years ago. He worked a lot with Mother Teresa, and he's still there now in his mid-70s doing the work, and he's incredible. But yeah, look, if I can play a small part in changing their lives, and I know it does make a difference because these kids are otherwise going to be living in leper colonies. We're now putting some girls through college at nursing and giving them life skills, which is really important because they get education, but then the next step is to teach them life skills so they can go back and support their family or create a new pathway for them. So when I see that happening, I think, we've really made a difference here.
I have to ask you, and I'm not sure if you've ever been asked this before, but being influenced by Mother Teresa, certainly in your writing there seems to be a sense of spirituality there. Are you religious?
Not in the sense that I go to church. I think, I try to make a clear distinction between what right and wrong. I don't always get that correct either, but I think if you do more good than harm, that's what I try and do. I try and be positive and try and improve myself most days. And if I can help out in something like this, I think that's, we have a responsibility if you've got a position of a privileged life. Religious? No, I probably wouldn't say I am religious, but then again, I respect people who are religious. I think it's a good thing.
That's great. Look, one thing I've struggled with is you see the Indian Premier League, and there are billionaires there who own the franchises, and they offer foreign cricketers and Indians hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to play cricket for them.
Yeah.
But in Australia, we've got mum and dad from down the street who are paying World Vision $33 or whatever it is a month to feed kids in India.
Yeah.
You've walked both sides of that path, and how do you accept that? How do you handle that when you're at a lavish party one day and in the slums of Kolkata?
Yeah, look, I try and stay pretty grounded. I think that's from where I was brought up and my parents and western suburbs of Sydney. So I sort of see it as it is. The A-list parties, I don't go to too many of those, and I see the lifestyle certain people live, and that's fair enough for them, but it's not for me. You try and stay grounded. I'm always inquisitive by nature. I like to look at people and see what's going on. I like to get down and dirty and see what's actually happening out there in real life. But yeah, look, there's a big difference. I mean, you say the IPL players, you can pay millions of dollars at the end of the day, then they walk out of the hotel and there's complete poverty. There's, I think, 800 or 700 million Indians earn less than $1.50 US a day. So there is this massive gap and difference, and sometimes you can be blasé about it and say, well, I can't do anything about it. But I'd prefer to think that the people who have got money, if they all take on one project each, can make a difference. And I'd like to see more sports people, particularly Indian players who earn big money, giving something back. I don't think sports people at that level are giving back enough at the moment. And you'd like to see more of those cricketers on these $1 million contracts, maybe sacrificing 1% of their wage. I don't think it'd go missing too much.
Yeah, I think it's a fair call. Look, you've also become the voice for a group of Australians that really aren't heard. They're the children who are suffering from rare disease. They're called the orphans of the charity and federal funding system. Yeah. How rewarding is that, and how tough is it?
It's very tough. I mean, it sort of followed on from the work in India. I wanted to set something up in Australia, and I'd always been inspired by kids with courage and character against the odds, and that got the foundation going. The Steve Waugh Foundation is supporting kids who had nowhere to turn. Lynette, my wife, did a hell of a lot of research on it and realised all the kids we're helping pretty much fitted into the category of a rare disease, and so that's where the foundation focuses in on now. And we fine-tune that even more to really support the kids who have extremely rare conditions, because they've got no funding, because they don't fit the criteria of any other charities or government funding. And we have a massive need for that in Australia. 7 to 10% of the population will suffer from a rare condition, and it really is something that hasn't been noticed in the past. So we need to bring awareness to these situations. And they really are in desperate need to help these people, because they are standing by themselves.
I've spoken to parents of these children, and they say you're almost their patron saint of a lost cause, because you are their last call for hope. Sure. That's a very heavy burden, though.
Look, I think that's nice of them to say that. Again, it's a team effort. I know Lynette does as much work as I do, and she's behind the scenes. We've got a great team in at the foundation, fantastic volunteers. But yeah, in a way, I think we are their last point of call, because unfortunately there's only us and one other charity, Smile, who look after kids with rare diseases, and there's probably 2 million Australians suffering from a rare disease. So the rarest of the rare have got nowhere to turn. So we do need more support. The disability scheme, I think, will help down the track, which the government's putting in place. But yeah, these people have got amazing character, and I just think that we should show the same strength of character back to them. We should try and emulate their strength of character, and we do that by helping with knowledge or volunteer time or money. And I'm happy to help them.
You're a man of impeccable timing. You've brought a book out which deals partly with leadership at the time that Australia is about to go to the polls. Yeah. What do you see in our leaders, in the people vying for the Prime Ministership?
Look, I watched the debate the other night, and I was just amazed that no one could give a straight answer. I think Australians just want honesty. I mean, even if we don't like it, I'd much rather hear a politician give me an honest answer. If it doesn't suit my particular lifestyle or what I'm doing, I'd tend to say, well, that's the sort of person I want to lead the country. I don't want them fobbing off questions or not answering questions. And I think I'm pretty much the average Australian. So I think the average Australian wants a politician to give an honest answer and to be upfront and saying, look, maybe we are heading for tough times, but this is what we've got to do to get out of it, much like the Australian cricket team. Now, sometimes you've got to take the short-term pain to get the gain long-term.
You said that when you become Australian cricket captain, everyone thinks you've got the answers to the mysteries of the world, but you do know leadership. And do you feel as though our political leaders do make the tough calls? Like, do they do it enough?
I think it's very hard to be a politician. I mean, I couldn't imagine the pressures are under to be across every topic and every subject, and you can't please everyone, that's for sure. There's 50% of people are going to love you, 50% are going to hate you. But I think you've got to have, like a cricket leader or a business leader, you've got to have that long-term vision. What is your goal? What are you working towards? What's your plan? And incorporate the people around you. I think you've got to have that team environment where, as a captain, I certainly didn't know all the answers, so I needed good advisors and good people around me. And don't be afraid to ask those people. You haven't always got the answer at your fingertips. So you've got to involve people around you. They've got to buy into what you're trying to say or do or believe in. But you really got to have some sort of vision. What are you working towards?
Two cricketers, Imran Khan and your old teammate Nathan Bracken, they've embraced politics. Has that ever crossed your mind? Have you ever been approached by a
I have. I'm probably more in the Mal Meninga corner, where it'd be 30 seconds and I'll be out of there. But
you'd walk out of this interview?
Yeah, but not yet, mate. It hasn't got that bad yet.
No, it's great.
No, look, I think it's a big step to take, and I admire them for their bravery. Imran Khan in particular, I know him pretty well, and he's very passionate and driven, and I think he would be a great leader of Pakistan. I'm not sure he'll ever get the chance, but full credit to what he's done so far. Nathan Bracken, I mean, that's a really big leap from cricket player to politician. So look, good on him, and I think his point was he wanted to make Central Coast turn a bit of a tourism hub, and it's got great potential there. And I've got a holiday place up there, so I fully endorse what he said the other day. And I think again, he was a breath of fresh air, but it's going to be a challenge for him to be across every issue.
Certainly. Steve, I've kept the toughest question for last. The Australian cricket team. Yep. How do we rebuild and how do we regain the glory days?
We may never regain the glory days that we had. I mean, that was pretty much a freakish era. And you look at the West Indies before us, they dominated for 10 years, we did it again. I don't think you'll see a team do that again because there's three forms of the game, which means your players are going to be split up. It's hard to be consistent across all those forms of the game. Mentally, players are going to be tired if they're playing all forms of the game. We've got to be patient, Like I keep saying to people, I didn't score 100 till my 26th test. Wasn't part of a win till my 13th test. And I saw Steve Smith being bagged today that he'd only had 2 wins in his first 11 tests. Well, I had none out of 13. So, we've got to remember that you can't always be successful straight away, and we've got to give these guys a bit of leeway, a bit of breathing space. Phil Hughes has been dropped 3 times already in his career, but he's scored centuries. He's got 23 first-class hundreds. The guy can obviously play, but we keep messing around with his head. I mean, his last 4 tests he's played, in 3 innings as those, he's played a great innings. He had a fantastic 60 in the 3rd test in India. Against the odds, he got really good 40 in the next test, got a great 80 in the first test at Trent Bridge. Missed out twice at Lords. One was a bad decision, and then he gets dropped again. I mean, it's just not the way you build confidence in players or the way you build their technique and make them established test players. So Usman Khawaja is another perfect case. He's failed again, and when he's come back, he's failed this last test match, and all of a sudden the questions are out, is he the right number 3? I mean, you've got to give them a couple of series to find their feet, and then if it's not the right person, then you can make a change, but we can't keep chopping and changing.
Steve, really appreciate your time. As I say, the meaning of luck is a great read.
Thanks.
And how do people get it? Because you can't go to a normal bookshop, can you?
Yeah, no, it's Big W. I'm self-publishing this time, so I worked out, I guess, a different way of doing it, and really enjoyed working with Big W. So, yeah, exclusively at Big W till Christmas, and then or next week we also in a few selected Woolworths stores.
Good luck with it all, and thanks for your
mate.
time, Steve.
Thanks very much.